opportunities are clearly with companies which are producing, because you have a bigger certainty about their flow, or their cash flow, which is going to be generated. I would think also projects which are advanced, which are close to production, have also they will gain a lot of value the closer they get to production. But there's also an opportunity, but at the same time, there's a lot of projects out there which have very little substance.
Joining me now is Daniel Jimenez. He's the founding partner of iLi Markets, iLi Markets. Daniel, welcome back.
Thank you very much, James. Happy to be here again.
Yes. Daniel, since we last spoke in May of 2022, the price of lithium has, as per your prediction, sustained its current high price. And earlier this month, well, last week, you tweeted that you felt that the prices were going to remain high because the optionality of the four major producers to restrict the production would keep it so, and they were likely to do that. Is that still the case in your opinion?
I mean, yes, that tweet was more on a thought about what if our supply-demand balance forecast was wrong, and indeed there was an oversupply. I personally think that the market will continue being very short of lithium. The predictions, I mean, and here the drivers for this are, speaking about 2023, how many EVs are going to be produced and sold, and how much lithium is going to be consumed of that, and on the other hand, the supply. On the demand side, on EVs, I mean, predictions are, you have a range of growth of EV sales of anywhere between 3 and 4.5 million vehicles. And actually, Albemarle just yesterday or the day before yesterday, in their presentation of their strategy, they forecast an increase of 4.5 million EVs being sold in 2023. This number alone means that demand for lithium for EVs would grow at least by 200,000 tons in 2023. So that is a starting point. And then when we look at the supply, yes, there will come incremental supply this year, but where is that incremental supply coming from? It's primarily coming from SQM and Albemarle, right? Both companies which have big big bets in this industry. I mean, and whatever they do, if that has a reaction in the market, I think they would probably be more cautious in putting too much lithium out into the market. We also have a couple of Greenfield projects which are starting up. We also have the ramp up of some of the what used to be idle capacity in Australia. This is all coming up on stream this year. But at the end of the day, I think companies like Albemarle, like SQM, like Pilbara, like Wodgina, in this case, it's Albemarle and Mount Meron included. I mean, they would probably very easily, economically, would make a lot of sense if they see an oversupply, simply not to produce that much, and to keep prices at this high level, which probably will anyway continue over the coming years because of this strong demand growth of lithium.
And so is the ability of the four major producers in Chile impacted at all by the capacity of production from the hard rock supply of primarily Australia?
I mean, at the end, where the lithium units come from, it's not that relevant. It's really more a decision of each of these companies. Do we push production so much to produce an oversupply? If we come to that event of oversupply, and to me, it would make a lot of sense if I'm running any of those companies to say, I'd rather slow down because economically, I would make less money if I push production, produce more, sell more, but at a lower price. And I think that is a very logic decision by any of these producers.
Sure. You mentioned that there were 2 greenfields projects coming online at some point in Chile.
No, no, not in Chile. There are a couple of greenfield projects coming out online this year in Argentina, uh, and in Australia, and I think those are essentially those which are coming online. And then, of course, and this is probably the biggest uncertainty, is how many new producers come up in China with from these lepidolites, which have been commented so much here in the industry, right? But those are greenfield projects, and we have, of course, Sigma in Brazil. Sorry, that's the other one.
On the lepidolite issue, can you explain to the viewers what lepidolite is and how it is a component in the lithium equation?
Yeah, I mean, lepidolites is one of the several forms in which you find lithium in hard rocks, spodumene being the best known. Of course, lepidolites, these are molecules which are quite long and includes a lot of other elements, but also lithium. And in general, the lithium concentrations of lepidolites, which you find in the world, are lower than those of spodumene, the lithium concentration of the mineral, of the ore. And what happens in China is that with these price levels of lithium today, the lepidolites in China used to have 0.8% lithium oxide. Those are the lepidolites which have been exploited. But with these new price levels, well, a lower grade of lepidolites also become economically viable. So suddenly, grades of 0.3% became also attractive to mine and to produce lithium out of them. Now, how long this is going to take to have that production out of there, and at what cost, that is the question. And the cost will most likely be a very high cost. And when we say very high, I've heard numbers of above $30. So yes, this is like a new source of lithium, which at old prices would have never been considered. Well, today it is viable at this price levels. How big it is and how quickly it can be put in production, that's another question.
So in that, it's the electric vehicle industry that drives lithium demand pretty much directly. Is there a risk this year that the recessionary fears, should they materialize in actual economic recession, going to cause the demand for lithium and the consumption of lithium industrially by electric vehicle manufacturers to retreat somewhat and thereby have a diminishing effect on the price of lithium? Any risk of that?
Well, I mean, what we need to estimate well or try to understand well is how many EVs are going to be sold compared with last year and how much lithium this demands, right? This incremental demand of lithium, which would be derived from this increased number. But when you look at the global space, last year around 10 million vehicles were sold. China 6, Europe a little bit over 2, and the other 1.5 between the US and the rest of the world. And how many are going to be sold now in 2023? I would say the consensus of the forecast for China is anyway around 8.5. So 8.5, maybe a little bit more. So there you have at least 2, maybe 2.5 million vehicles of incremental sales in China. Europe, on the other hand, is an area where sales in 2022 did not grow much. But this had a lot to do with supply constraints, and that EV manufacturers did not have the vehicles available to be delivered. And as a matter of fact, there are models or brands where the waiting time for receiving an EV is more than 12 months. So you have the apparent demand, what you would think were last year's EV sales, actually the demand was a lot higher. So I would also presume that Europe we will see a certain release in this production constraints, and therefore a larger amount of vehicles being sold. And maybe that's 500, 800,000 vehicles, so that more than last year. And finally, in the US, you also have a big momentum. The sales in the US grew significantly last year. We have a large number of new models coming out into the market this year. So again, here I would also think that sales of EVs are going to continue growing very strongly. Global passenger vehicle sales would probably, in a recessional environment, sales would go down, but EVs continue capturing market share from this total passenger vehicle sales, and therefore I would expect that EV sales are going to grow. In our forecast, we had in iLi Markets forecast a growth of around 4 million vehicles, but Albemarle yesterday published their forecast of 4.5 million vehicles. So again, that sustains a little bit the thesis that there will be an incremental demand, a significant incremental demand of lithium during 2023, and whether the supply can catch up with that is to be seen.
Sure. It's interesting to me the economic correlation between the price of lithium and thereby indirectly the cost of lithium-ion batteries in electric vehicles causes the price of lithium-powered vehicles to be higher than would be the case if there was a more robust supply of lithium and therefore a cheaper lithium price at the intake point. So I mean, I guess there is probably an impetus behind global demand for lithium that is going to cause, at some point, an oversupply and price depreciation incrementally once those supplies can catch up, if they can catch up. At what point do you see that potentially happening, or are we so far behind the demand curve that it's impossible to see that far?
Yeah. Look, when we look at the big picture, demand in global production of lithium in 2020 was around 300,000 tons. Forecasts for 2030 speak anywhere from 2.7 to 3.7 million tons. So that is, let's say, roughly 10 times the demand of 2020. It's 10 to 13 times, really. 10 times. Imagine what that means in terms of simply know-how required to develop new projects, to develop new mines, to get refining in place. I mean, that's a massive challenge. And today, what you see across the industry is that the experienced know-how is very limited, because those guys who in 2020 produced lithium, they need to multiply themselves by 10 to get this required demand satisfied. And the lack of this expertise is very evident in the industry. And we will see this because most likely many of these Greenfield projects which are being developed, their ramp up or their timeline will be delayed because of lack of experienced know-how. And that is, I would say, across the globe today the situation.
Sure. There's there's been all these companies in Canada, publicly traded companies, that have been developing projects in Chile, they say. Yet in the last decade, there haven't been any Canadian companies bringing Chilean production of lithium online. And so despite this continuous wave of company after company acquiring projects, investing in exploration, no production is forthcoming. And I'm curious as to why that is, whether it's because of the regulatory environment that kind of plays in favor of the incumbent majors, or is it something else?
No, it's definitely the regulatory environment. I mean, Chile has an awful law with respect to lithium. And the truth is, if you have today, if you have a mining property, you can explore and extract any metal which is in that mining property, with exception of lithium. Lithium is not concessible. And for that reason, if you want to exploit that lithium, you need to get a special permit from the Ministry of Mining, to a right to extract that lithium. You know how many permits have been granted over the last 10 years?
How many?
One. You know who got that permit?
Albemarle.
No. Codelco. Codelco, the state-owned copper company. No private company has received any. And Atacama is actually another story. The mining properties of Atacama, they go back to before 1980, when this new mining code was approved. So those properties, the owner of those mining rights, old minings, he indeed owns the lithium, because during the old code, lithium, you could exploit the lithium. The problem is that the owner of that mining property is Corfo, which is like a state development agency, and it leases this mining properties to SQM and Albemarle. But that is the reason why that Atacama is producing lithium today and nothing else in Chile. So it's not that legislation favors the incumbents. It's simply that Atacama is under a old mining code, or the mining rights belong to the old mining code, and all the rest is new. And you don't, if you have them property, the lithium is not yours. So why would you explore if you have basically very small chance to get the rights to exploit that lithium? And Chile is very underexplored. As a matter of fact, there's very little drilling going on here in salt flats. Different to Argentina, where in Argentina you have, I don't know, 30 projects, because lithium is treated there as one, was just one additional metal.
Yes. So the special designation of lithium that made it unconcessible, as you say, was a result of its perceived value as a potential nuclear material, a weapons application, which has subsequently been demonstrated to not be at all pertinent. Yet the Chilean government maintains this special category for lithium. And I'm wondering, is there a perhaps, I'm not going to say corrupt, because that's a matter of interpretation, but is that serving the Chilean producers' interest to have it remain so that it doesn't bring in all kinds of foreign exploration and thereby create more supply in competition to its own state-owned interests?
No, not at all. And I will tell you, SQM and Albemarle, I think as well, own a lot of mining property in salt flats, which they cannot exploit. So they would benefit a lot of this, right? No, the reason for this, James, is ideology. In this part of the world, we have still some dinosaurs who believe that the people are best served if the state runs a mining operation, and therefore the profit state can be distributed to the people. That is ideology, and then in 1970, the copper industry was nationalized in Chile during the Allende government. That's how Codelco was born. Codelco is today a dinosaur, a dying dinosaur, still very big, but really no energy. And the same guys, the same ideology, they are proposing the same for lithium. And they don't want lithium to get privatized. They don't want it to be free, because it escaped from what their state-owned company could do. That is ideology, and we have had over the last years two right-wing governments, and there is not the political backing to turn this around. They all understand the problem. Even left-wing moderate left wing politicians. But there's not the political will to go against this current of nationalizing whatever they can.
So, I mean, is it lost on those who maintain that ideology that this kind of nationalist approach to their mining is actually going to, in the future, undermine their ability to compete globally, because without open exploration and investment, foreign investment, and also, making it so that people can explore and export, most importantly, the lithium that they find. I mean, at some point, Chile's going to become a smaller and smaller and smaller contributor to the global lithium equation.
They're absolutely right. That is happening, and it's going to happen even further. But here you're talking about religion, James. That God exists or does not exist. I mean, this is religion, and it's a very, very hard to understand position. With all the practical results we have seen of these policies globally over history, and yet that continues being. And look what's happening in other Latin American countries. I mean, it's all the same story. Huh?
It seems like it's evolutionary regression.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, Daniel. So finally, I just been curious about this whole direct lithium extraction boondoggle that is also being preferred by some publicly traded or would-be publicly traded companies. There are companies that are attempting to propose a business based strictly on their technology, yet all of the direct lithium extraction technologies, as they're called, that I've seen actually are a collection of existing technologies cobbled together in a new way with maybe, a novel absorbent material or reagent, or, there's really no new technology there. And so despite that, the Chilean government has made it clear that future production or future permitting of lithium production, which now almost seems like a futile conversation after your comments, but that if it were to proceed, it would have to be through something that used much less water than conventional evaporation methodologies, and that sort of points to direct lithium extraction. But is there any sort of impetus to move away from evaporation ponds towards a direct lithium strategy in Chile?
I mean, I think the concept of a DLE, this concept that you take the brine, you put it in a black box, you get lithium on the one side, and then all the brine you re-inject in the salt side. I mean, it's beautiful, and that's why the SQMs, the Albemarles, they have studied this for years. Run a lot, invested a lot in this, because it conceptually, yes, it's great, but they have not worked this technology so far. Right? So with this in mind, yes, the Chilean government has made some statements that they want the lithium industry to develop, but not with evaporation, with solar evaporation, but with these DLEs. Well, I ask myself, where have they heard that these things work? They should also be aware that DLEs require a lot of fresh water, because what you evaporate in a system is salty water, which will never be water again fresh water until you evaporate it again. They require a lot of energy. They require some of them, a lot of reagents. They require, they might generate effluents which are contaminant. So, I mean, you have so many ifs, and to bet on a policy based on something which doesn't work, commercially at least, is very, again, ideological. And I'm curious to see they have said that they're going to issue a new directive for lithium industry in Chile. It has been postponed a couple of times now. We will see what comes out of that. But again, this I think will be a lot affected by the ideology of the government, which is today in place, and it will probably not conduct too much. It's my personal feeling. Yeah, elephants do not fly.
Yes, right. Okay, so then finally, in your opinion, where are investors best advised to focus their research in an effort to exploit the emerging lithium bull market?
Look, I think that the opportunities are clearly with companies which are producing, because you have a bigger certainty about their flow or their cash flow, was it going to be generated. I would think also projects which are advanced, which are close to production, have also they will gain a lot of value the closer they get to production. So there's also an opportunity, but at the same time, there's a lot of projects out there which have very little substance. And when I mean substance, I mean maybe the resource is there, and the resource is a viable resource, but you need a lot more than just a resource. You need a very good geology, a very good mining plan, with a very good process, very good engineering, and that, as I said earlier, the know-how for that is very limited globally. And there are projects which are very well staffed and others which are not very well staffed. And that is what investors need to see, is who's behind these projects. How much know-how is there really there?
Okay. Daniel, can you give us an overview of what iLi Markets does in Chile, and give us some examples of your customers?
I mean, we have a couple of legs of things we do. On the first off, we have a market intelligence unit. And what we do there is we have a quarterly market report, which is on a subscription basis, in which actually are presentations we do on a one-to-one to clients, in which we review supply, demand, balance, price forecast, and so on. And this, as I said, is we do this on a one-on-one presentations, and we update this really on a weekly basis. And so we have clients who want to see it at the beginning of the quarter, end of the quarter, in between, depending on the nature of them. And because we have clients in different spaces, miners, we have clients which are cathode producers, so the front line of the buyers. We have OEMs and battery manufacturers. We have clients also in the investors, in the investing space or banking space. So we do that on the one hand, and on the other leg we have an advisory which is more based on M&A. So we do review assets. We eventually help our clients to value them, to negotiate eventual participation there. We do also the due diligence for them, and for that we coordinate this due diligence. And we use really companies which have experience and know-how in lithium production. So that is, I would say, the other important leg of what we're doing here at iLi Markets. Most of our clients, almost all of our clients, are not in Chile. And the truth, in Chile, there's very little to do at this point because of what we said earlier. It's very sad for me, honestly. Very, very sad.
Okay, Daniel, we're going to leave it there for now. That was a great conversation, as usual. And I appreciate your time, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you for having me here. Happy to talk.
You bet. Thanks. Bye for now, Daniel.